All right. Welcome to another episode of Rangecast. We have salesman Nate Geary here, also radio host. Super happy to have him here. Obviously, he's right around the corner in the office, not that far away. But
it's pretty close.
Yeah. This man knows a ton about all sorts of things that dive into the cannabis industry, what goes on with their websites, what goes on, like I said, within the industry. So I'm super excited to talk to him. He's got a bunch of things to talk to us about today, and we'll dive right into it. I know you had a couple topics you were looking to cover.
Yeah. For us, the kind of the big topic of conversation is e-commerce, as it pertains to the cannabis industry, which is, kind of an ancillary, important software integration that, we're constantly doing for our clients, whether it's, one of the main kind of the big three menu companies or any of the other smaller menu companies, e-commerce companies out there. Our job is to kind of combine our website technology and our SEO technology with the functions of these e-commerce companies. So, it does play a really sort of big partnership role in the success of our clients. So, I'm excited to kind of dive into it a little bit, educate people that, may be opening a dispensary, especially here in New York. It's funny, I have a friend who, is going to be a license holder in Orchard Park, and
oh, really?
And she had no idea about all of these additional technologies,
Wow.
the differences that you can get in technology integrations with menus. So there's a lot of really good information, good tidbits that we'll be sharing, just kind of about your choices as you start to dive into the technology stack your dispensary is going to need to survive and thrive.
So many different technology stacks, and we've been going through that.
It's
I know
insane.
I learned some from Mark, obviously learned some from Carl, but there's just so many different pieces of technology that dispensaries need that are built around specifically for the cannabis industry. And I think of e-commerce, I think of things like Shopify, but I mean, obviously it's a completely different platform, and because it's not federally legal, you probably can't have a Shopify cannabis site, which I'm not sure for sure.
Canada,
but,
yes.
Oh, okay.
So, and like people have sort of used the Shopify theme, so to speak, as the structure for building out some native e-commerce, which we'll talk about as kind of one of the big three types of e-commerce that e-commerce companies are offering in terms of like software integrations.
Okay.
But yeah, Shopify is not really there yet, especially here in the US. WordPress is WordPress. It's your garden. You can dig it, but you need the developer on the back end and the front end to build something a little bit more custom if you're using WordPress.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a lot of different variations of kind of what people are doing from the software and development side.
Okay. Well, we can dive right into it.
Might as well.
I guess the first type, traditional e-commerce would be what for cannabis industry.
I would bucket e-commerce into three separate categories for dispensaries. Now, this isn't universal for every single industry, but this is very specific to cannabis, to retail cannabis, is the standard embed iframe, which I can get into in a second. Then you kind of have like the hybrid, plug-in solution, or a company like Timber, who we have partners with and have mutual clients with. They use a proxy setup, which is essentially creating two separate websites, one for the actual e-commerce sort of platform itself, and then it's sort of we build a separate site on a separate URL technically, and those two websites we communicate to Google as one. So that's kind of the proxy setup, the hybrid setup, and then you have full native e-commerce, which is what people would say the actual menu itself lives on your domain. It lives on your URL. So we bucket into three: embed, iframe, the hybrid model, the Timber, and Jane. I heard Jane has built their own plugin for this. It's called Jane Boost, and then the headless model, which is really being kind of pushed by Dutchy and by Jane Roots, Dutchy Plus. Those are the full custom e-commerce. But as an industry, we're not really there on the quality of the native headless e-commerce, but it doesn't mean that it's not being rolled out.
Okay, I got you. All right, so explain to us more then. What's traditional embed then?
So let's talk about first the traditional embed for menu integrations. Think of,
she was interested too.
She didn't get that.
That's fine.
But when you consider the traditional embed iframe integration, what you're really doing is you're taking a very small piece of shortcode that code just gets copied and pasted in the back end of a website, in the back end of a WordPress website, right? So you could have a blank page that's for your specific menu page, abcdispensary.com/menu, right? And that's your menu page. So what this code does is it lives on the back end of your website, and it essentially is a window into that e-commerce company's platform, but it looks unique to you. So it's going to have all the products that your POS has. So if you have 500 SKUs, all 500 SKUs sort of are presented in this window, and it exists in the website, but it's not actually living on your website. So where it is it's this window into their platform. So when you are on that actual page, I can't track how many products that person, went to go look at. I can't track necessarily. Now, at the end user, I can find out, did that person convert? What did they buy? But I don't know what pages they're interacting with until they make an actual action, whether that's adding something to a cart, cashing out, so on and so forth. But I can't tell a client, hey, look how many pages, look how many products these customers are interacting with on your website, because it's that window into a separate platform, which is, I think why a lot of these menu companies are moving more towards the native and headless, mostly because those menu companies kind of get to control what is being promoted, whether it's promotions, whether it's specials.
I see what you're saying.
That dispensary doesn't necessarily get to put it in a way that might mesh with their branding, put it in a way that might mesh with the structure of their website.
With what they're doing.
It's very limited. And really where this all stems from in this conversation we're having is what is best for SEO, right? Search engine optimization. How does Google look at a menu that's in an iframe embed versus a fully native embed? And for a long time, the thought was, well, these iframes can't be crawled by Google. There is no SEO value. Google has sort of since pushed back on that over the last 2 or 3 years, really the past 18 months, to say, well, actually, we can crawl these embeds. So if there is a product description, if there is a product category, and you are optimizing it in the actual platform at iHeartJane or Dutchie or whatever iframe platform you're using, and they're optimized properly, Google can crawl that and provide the SEO value to you. It's just a little bit more convoluted, and it's not an absolute. So from an SEO perspective, it's the least ideal, but it's not nothing, if that makes sense.
Now, this is a question I had real quick. So like you said, it connects to the POS. Doesn't, like, if someone buys something in store and they have a certain amount in stock, does it go down on their website?
Yeah, so the integration happens between the actual POS and the menu.
Okay.
So that is nothing that we control, right? So that's why we don't really have a preferred POS partner, because there is no direct integration I can help with on the POS side. That direct integration is happening in the middle point, which is the menu itself.
Gotcha. Because that's pretty cool. If if the inventory goes down in store, then it's the same amount.
That's right. Because what it is, and we'll talk about this at Headless, what the API is, it's the data being fed from the POS into the menu system that is telling them what the inventory for the product is, what the SKU is, what the product description is, and clients can go in and change those product descriptions to be a little bit more unique to them. So it is all it's just, you sort of think of it as like people talk about the cloud, right? Like things living in the cloud. Yeah. It is this open API that is spitting all the data into the actual e-commerce menu itself. That is what's being presented on the front end to the client.
Okay. Another question I would have is, how many dispensaries do you think are still using traditional embed?
90%.
Oh, okay. So it's still okay.
I mean, that might have changed. I would tell you that Timber has made a lot of strides in the hybrid section, which is that second bucket, right?
Okay.
Where I think the second bucket has pushed the industry closer and closer to headless and further away from the iframe. I would think now when companies are onboarding new clients for e-commerce, they're really not having a conversation about the iframe embed, because they don't want them to have a conversation about the embed. They want to have that conversation around the hybrid model, the plug-in model that Jane has, Jane Boost product, right? Or, hey, Jane Roots, we're ready to go into a fully native headless e-commerce. But that middle bucket is sort of pushing the industry quicker and further than maybe we thought it would 18 months ago, because of the competition that it's caused. It's Jane and Dutchie have both lost clients moving to this more unique custom feel looking menu. Now, it's not fully custom, but it is more custom than what you're used to seeing with an iframe. So I call it the hybrid, because it is the true middle ground between an iframe and that true headless native e-commerce, that custom e-commerce.
Okay. So you mentioned Timber is one of the companies doing the hybrid.
I would say they're the ones that started the hybrid.
That started the hybrid?
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the benefits of the hybrid then? And I just go into that because this is all new to me as well, because I know some platform technologies that we have for cannabis industry and how it relates to SEO, but not as deep as what you're talking about now. So what's the difference between that and benefits and pros and cons?
I sort of mentioned broadly how the Timber setup is, which is it's a proxy. So think of our website, the Range website that we build is content.abcdispensary.com. That's the content URL that we have built. Then Timber has built this additional website that's the actual root domain, so abcdispensary.com. That menu lives there. Our job as developers and with Timber is to integrate the two things together so that when Google reads that website, it reads it as one website. So when they're clicking on click menu or a deep link, which is a product category. So say on your homepage, it says shop now, or below shop from one of our categories. Maybe you want to concentrate. Maybe you want a flower. Maybe you want pre-rolls. So when you click on that deep link to pre-rolls, it's going to bring you to the pre-roll section of the menu with Timber. And with Timber, the biggest difference here, and this was their biggest selling point when this started getting rolling out, SEO, is now these products have individual pages where they can optimize the product description. They can optimize the category of that product.
So if you're looking for, say for instance, you're in San Francisco and you're looking for cookies,
correct?
That's one of the most popular ones I know of. Then you're going to search like cookies, bud, or something near me. And then that dispensary is going to show up with that product.
Exactly. So where this is going ultimately, and why we're having this conversation in the first place, is like, where is the industry going from an SEO perspective? Which is, I would say right now, probably 7 to 10% of the inbound organic traffic is coming from brand-related searches. So Stizzy pre-rolls, cookies, edibles, raw garden concentrates, right? So when somebody Google searches that particular brand, if your website or if your products aren't optimized, then your website, that page is not going to show up in a given market when you are Google searching that. That was the biggest pain point for people saying, hey, now, in my opinion, I think it's been made out to be a little bit more than it is, meaning it still is only 7 to 10% of your organic traffic. Now, that will grow over time as consumers become more familiar with brands. They'll be seeking those brands out. They know what brand they want to smoke, that they want to consume, they want to eat. So they're going to look for those brands. But right now, it's still such a, immature market. It's such a,
you could go
I hate
in
to be
just
cliche.
You're trying everything out.
It's a budding market. I'm sorry to be cliche, but it is what it is. Whereas, people are still, you go to Las Vegas and you're from Buffalo and you're not from a recreational market and you want to try a dispensary, you want to try a product. You're not going to have the familiarity with brands that someone that lives in Las Vegas who has a group of 3 or 4 dispensaries he consistently goes to, right? So you're not going to seek a product.
Yeah.
You're going to seek a retail store. You're going to say, what's the closest dispensary to Caesar's Palace? What's the closest dispensary near me? And now Google has to give you the best results based on that local search. That's where Range has always historically lived, is that local search aspect, which in a market like Las Vegas can be huge because you have constant influx of new traffic of 1, 2, 3 time buyers. They leave, maybe they come back. But, in smaller markets, you can see where that brand-driven SEO will be important. It might be more like 15, 20% of your inbound organic traffic, whereas in a market like Las Vegas, it might only be 5%. So it's just something to consider. That's really where Timber, I think, started driving the conversation, is they built this whole concept around, now we can get your products to rank when someone's looking for your products. And that had sort of been the blind spot in our industry, at least for the last little while.
Okay, absolutely. So we had talked about, in-bed iframe, and then a little bit of the headless. And like 90% of the clients you see are still in in-bed. And then like, that means you have 10% left. And I would imagine, I don't know how many, maybe 6 or 7% are doing the hybrid now.
Yeah.
And then what's headless?
It's a very, very small piece of the pie. But I think, when you look at creative agencies, when you go out there now, and if you want to find, companies that have headless, what you're finding is it has become very templatized, meaning, some websites look exactly the same. There is no fundamental difference. And that's fine. And that's kind of like, we landed on the moon, right? You put the flag in, we're here.
But it's boring.
And it hasn't been perfected yet. And I think that's kind of where Headless is, and the other part of this too is Headless is open API, meaning there is data being spit out from the menu provider that is being fed in from the POS, right? That data historically through the iframe or through their embed, embed or through their plugin, they're building the infrastructure. Now with Headless, they want Range. They want another agency to take the open API, the open flowing data, and build the structure, what the menu actually looks like, the grid on your menu page, what it looks like on the home page, where that data is going and flowing to is now being sort of put on a web developer, which is very different from what it has historically been, which is just these basic templates. The problem is the companies and the agencies that have begun rolling this out have sort of lost the creativity because this is still a new concept. You don't want to get insanely creative on the front end and not be able to match it with functionality on the back end.
Yeah,
right. So, and that's kind of the difficult nature of this, which on top of that, CS, customer service, right? Which is hugely important in every industry, no matter what you do, sales, fulfillment, customer service is the most important thing for every company, right? You got to have happy customers to make money. Your customers got to be happy for them to make money and to give you money, blah, blah, blah. And now, instead of, hey, I have a problem with my menu, I'm calling the menu company. It's, hey, I've got a problem. Now I have to call my agency. Now I have to call my web company. I have to call my SEO company. And that is really, I think, the most difficult part for an agency is they're not really equipped for customer service at that type of level.
So this is putting it on us instead of it being...
Exactly. We just built this thing. I don't know what's going on. And, I only have one or two IT people.
Yeah.
And we haven't fully tested and vetted and went through QA. We just know that somebody needed it. It was built and we've sold it. And I think that's part of the reason that Range has been very calculated in our approach to this, which is, yes, we recognize that this is the future of online cannabis sales, but also that people are going to fail before they succeed in doing it. So watching other agencies do something that may work functionally but does not have that front-end desire that a client wants, Range on the front end, Range is Range. We build these amazing sites. How can we interact a more custom headless native e-commerce experience with a traditional Range site? And that's kind of where we're going right now internally in development. So, kind of to bring it home is that it is available. People can go and get their native e-commerce. They can get their headless e-commerce from Dutchie, from Jane. They're the primary people doing it right now. But from the agency and on the front end, the people that are actually building this, the capabilities, the design, the mastering of it is not there yet. And I think, that strategically positions Range in a place to perfect it. And I think that's the most exciting part about it.
That is super exciting. One thing I want to touch on too, just I may have missed it, but why? I get why the embed iframe is different, but why it wasn't necessary to move to this type of e-commerce?
I think it's what people like me, ownership here at Range, have been asking for months and months. Well, why is this, right?
Just to make something new?
Sometimes in software, people make software that nobody asks for, right? And I'm not here to tell you that no one has asked for custom e-commerce. I believe that they have. I believe there is a desire from a smaller percentage of dispensary owners, larger scale MSOs, multi-state operators, multi-location operators. They want that more custom feel, which I totally get. But I do want to say that I have wondered myself, and I think a lot of it has to do with the e-commerce companies wanting to take CS, customer service, off of their plate and putting it onto somebody else.
Yeah.
I think that they don't want to be that customer service farm. They want to do what they do, which is take raw data from a POS system and build the product pages out and let somebody else handle the front-end development of it and in cases, the back-end development of it. So I think that's the core reason why. I'm not sure that it's because dispensary owners and large-scale dispensaries were knocking down the doors of these e-commerce companies saying, we need custom. I'm sure that there was desire for it, but I think largely this just has to do with it's the natural progression. If you're a software company and you don't evolve, you die. If you don't have something new to sell, you die. So I think because if you don't build it, someone else will. So I think that's sort of the, and when you talk about Jane and Dutchie, you're talking about 80 75% of the market share in e-commerce and cannabis are controlled by those two companies. The rest is, everyone else. And I think Tipper's done a great job eating away at that. But there is still a lot to be had. There's still a large piece of this pie. And I think that's why you see Dutchie, going out and raising $200 million. You see these companies raising so much money is to flush out that technology, is to get this to a place where they can start to take it out of the sandbox. They can take it out of, development and move it into actual application and real life scenarios and integration. So that's kind of where we are. And now that there is real life, it's not just a prototype anymore. It's real life, real action. There's still a huge gap between what the final product will be and what it is right now.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I asked that because it's something that was on my mind. We're having this conversation.
It's a question I still ask myself.
Well, why?
Why?
Like, why does it need to be done? But
I agree.
I mean, we see opportunities in the market and what other companies are doing, and
Right.
we like to find solutions and create new ones. So I'm excited to, hear and see what we're doing as well.
And I think that's the most exciting part of this conversation is what Range is doing. And, listen, I'll say this about our internal development team, led by our CTO, Paul Bork. They're doing really incredible things. And, like every technology company, time is our biggest opponent, right?
Of course.
Is how much time can something
Somebody
take?
beats you
And
to it,
that's exactly right. And in this case, we wanted to be beaten to it. I think for the big reason of, again, it's not to say that I think other companies are doing this are failing. I just
Let
think
them
that
make the
other
mistakes
companies
first and learn from it.
Exactly right, and see what people are doing, see what people are buying, take what they're buying, and supplement what we do really well. And I think the one area that these, I think the Headless and native e-commerce are sort of really missing is that local SEO element of it. And to simply throw away local SEO for 10, 12, 15%, you're taking, it's in this, I always go back to this gambit, right? It's the robbing Peter to pay Paul. Are you willing to lose the bigger portion of it to get the more specific portion? And although maybe you can sell it in a way where you're not actually saying you're doing that, right now, when you look at a headless e-commerce, there is no content on the website. There is it is menu. And although that is fine, it's a good shopping experience, you have to be able to marry user experience with functionality, with SEO implementation. You can't just dive in or go all into one. That's how you become obsolete. That's how you get passed by your competitors. And I think now where we are is that we are leaning so far in the one direction, which is we need brand SEO and we need custom e-commerce, that what we've done is really kind of sacrificed the local SEO aspect of this, which I just think from a pure business decision perspective,
It's bad.
It's bad for business because it's going to reduce the amount of revenue being generated.
Absolutely. Well, this is awesome information. I mean, we'll obviously have more development on this and, speak to Paul. I'm excited. We're going to have a conversation with Paul just to find out the, deeper nuggets about what's going on and how we're combating and how we're finding a solution and creating that. So it's been super good. Hopefully, this is information for dispensaries as well, just about what's going on in the market. If they haven't even heard of, some probably haven't heard of Headless yet, maybe.
Right. Some may not even heard of the embed. I think, and especially in places like New York, it's not my territory. I'm an out west guy. I focus on California. I focus on Nevada and Arizona. But we are front and center. We've been in the cannabis space for 8 years now, 9 years. And that knowledge of what the markets that the markets that have made mistakes and have learned from them, we can apply those same principles here in New York. And I think, that gives us, we're a cannabis marketing company based in Buffalo, New York. And we've been for a very long time. And we aren't even fully recreationally legal yet. And I just think that's positioned ourselves as, you could go to your local marketing agency here in Buffalo. They don't have 8 years, 9 years, 10 years of experience in the cannabis space like we do. And I think that's a huge advantage for us as, this state starts to blossom and to grow. And I think it's a really exciting time for us, but it's also a really exciting time for the industry itself. And like I said, someone that is in the tech space that is now, going to have their own dispensary, they were just fully surprised at how much, how many aspects of digital, and not just digital, but, different technology stacks actually go into a successful, sort of online experience.
That's amazing.
Yep.
That's amazing. All right. Well, we'll check in here in a couple of weeks or however long it takes to get Paul on here to describe, but
exactly right.
Super excited. And another episode of Rangecast talking about e-commerce platforms for dispensaries. Awesome.